listening to episode 9 of the Microprose podcast. Today's featured guests are Andre Read and Anders Groenningsaeter, who will be chatting with us about their game, the Fertile Crescent.
Hello and welcome back to the Microprose podcast. We are Dan Tozer and Nancy Knott, and today we will be talking about the Fertile Crescent with Anders Groenningsaeter and Andre Read from Wield Interactive.
For more than a decade, Andre has worked professionally as producer, game designer, lead programmer, UX designer, level designer, university lecturer, and more. He has won several awards, including Rising Star at Spillprisen with Enki in 2015, winner at Norwegian Championship in Gameplay with Agents vs. Villain also in 2015, and Best Entry with RGB at Norwegian Game Awards in 2011. Anders is an award-winning sound designer and composer who has contributed to many games, including Cast and Chill, Cozy Caravan, Fledgling Heroes, The Fertile Crescent, and more. Anders was recognised for his excellence in sound design at the 2024 Australian Game Developer Awards.
Anders, Andre, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
The Fertile Crescent is inspired by the real history of the Bronze Age and blends classic base-building RTS gameplay with unique mechanics. Andre, what can you tell us about the game, and how do things like food surplus, bartering economies, and societal growth reflect real historical dynamics?
The game is highly inspired by history books that we'd read, and we wanted to make a game that was where the game mechanics were inspired by real history and how societies worked back then. The food surplus mechanic is inspired by early urban settlements when people started making the first big cities, and to do that you had to have a huge surplus of food. And so the economy worked a bit different back then because you didn't have money the way we have today. Food was power. If you had food, you had safety and you had bargain power, because when not everyone in society have to gather food, you have people doing other things, becoming craftsmen and priests, and you have different classes, and they start tinkering on a lot of other different things. So we kind of represent that in the game as increased knowledge generation. So basically, if you have a food surplus, you get access to technologies faster, and also in the game every unit consumes food, so you have to balance the food consumption against the military might, because there's a price to just maintain an army. You can't just train an army and then let it sit there and do nothing. You have to be smart about when you train an army and how to use it.
I love the idea of translating complex historical concepts into gameplay systems. Were there any mechanics that seemed risky at first but ended up becoming central to the experience?
I think the fact that units consume food, because most comparable games you pay to train a villager or a warrior and then you just have it. And so the fact that you're actually paying a fee just to have a unit and it's nonstop, and that's something we prototyped and experimented with quite early, and it really changed the gameplay because especially in multiplayer where you have to defend your village but you also want to save up a food surplus to get the technological advantage over your opponent, whereas versus your enemy might be building this huge army and going all out and trying to take you out, but then risking starvation and actually not being able to bounce back from that very easily. We focused a lot on multiplayer in the beginning just to test the core gameplay loop, and it just worked in our favor, and that's just something we had to try.
How do you balance experimentation with knowing when something is done?
Well, we developed the game very iteratively. So we would slowly add new features as we tested them, and then made sure that every new feature we added or mechanic would work with everything else we had. Early in the game, we would make a lot of bigger changes, and then as we kind of realized more and more what the final vision would be from the early prototyping, then the changes would kind of be like smaller and smaller and smaller as we progress, whatever felt natural.
Yeah, I don't know if there was a one-size-fits-all kind of answer to that. Like, we just keep working till it feels good. That's really what the strategy has been so far. And then if we don't get what we need from it, at some point we'll decide that we spent too much time and stop or give up on that feature.
Makes sense.
Is the goal to simulate history accurately or to capture the feeling of leading a civilization in that era?
Yeah, it's simplification. Definitely trying to capture the vibe and be inspired by it, but a gameplay will always come first. Certain things might not be 100% from a historical standpoint, but we try to be as close as we can.
How did the two of you meet, and how long have you been working together?
We've been working together for close to 10 years now, huh? We met initially on a Norwegian Facebook group for game developers in Norway. And I sent a message because I was considering moving back to Norway. We both live in Australia. Reached out to game developers on that Facebook group, and it was Andre who was the most responsive out of everyone. And then we got to talking about TFC, and very quickly afterwards we started working together.
It's awesome.
Andre, how has your background in software engineering and project management shaped the way you approach game development?
Yeah, so I actually had wanted to make real-time strategy game for I was probably 12, 13 years old. And then I went into game development so that one day, hopefully, I could make my own RTS game. I kind of realized early that it's not an easy genre to develop, especially not on your own. I think it was like 10 years where I was just doing other projects, learning, being a student, starting other companies, other types of projects, becoming a better developer, a better programmer, and actually having a few attempts at the genre, realizing this is just too complicated for me. I wouldn't get very far. And then in 2017, I had a breakthrough where I finally got somewhere, and that was the beginning of TFC. So this project has been a long time in the making.
Anders, the soundtrack is so distinctive. How do you approach creating music for a time period where no recordings exist?
That's a really good question. That was something I spent a long time on. Basically, I decided that there's obviously no recorded music from that time, and we've got a pretty basic understanding that they were using a lot of rhythm instruments and maybe some string instruments. So I didn't feel like that was enough for what we were doing. And we weren't really trying to create period accurate music either. So instead of trying to address the time that it's in, I just tried to make it sound ancient. But that was actually kind of far down the priority list in terms of the music I wanted to make, because I really wanted to make the 70s synthesizer space soundtrack and then added Eastern harmonies and scales to it. And that's basically what it is. I think if you were to make a game set in the Middle East, but in space, the soundtrack could also work.
Nice.
But yeah, entirely fueled by my own interests, really.
I love that. And have the players responded differently to the music more than you expected?
Yeah, they have. Well, not so much the soundtrack itself. People seem to like it, which I appreciate. But there's a specific track in the Horde mode where we took a left turn and made a drum and bass track. So to my mind, one of the jobs of the music is to create moments for the players. When you play the Horde mode, you work really hard and you get to the end. And the way that we designed it, you're always going to be like almost at the edge of losing. And the balancing is really good for that section. And so when you get to the final wave of the Horde mode and the music is completely different and it's like Middle Eastern drum and bass, instead like sounding a little bit referencing back to the original soundtrack, but in a drum and bass style, that we get a lot of comments on that and people are very excited about it, which is very surprising. So yeah, we need to explore that more maybe.
Do you feel like you've accidentally created a new musical genre?
Some players have written that you invented a new genre.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many subgenres, and but yeah, that could very well be a new musical genre. That's part of the approach for any game that I compose for, is to try to make something that's unique to that game. So if you had played the game and then a week later walked down the street and heard a song, even if it's not the specific one from the game you were playing, you should be able to identify it as a song in that style.
What's the biggest challenge of being a two-person studio? And what direction do you see Wield Interactive taking in the long term?
I think for TFC, it's a very ambitious project. It requires a lot of different skill sets. Although we do have a lot of them, we also have a few skill gaps. The time it takes to get good at everything, it's only so many disciplines you can get decent at before something has to give. Definitely getting some external help has been important.
The one benefit of it is that we do get to work really closely with each other, and so we have a really good shorthand in terms of communicating about what the game is and what it should be and what the right decisions are. We're pretty on the same track. For what's happening next for Wield, we're still working on games. We want to make more games. We are. I think long term, we would like to be a fairly small studio. I don't think we want to get too big. We're focused on longevity and work-life balance. We think that's pretty key to making good games. If we're lucky enough to get in a position where we could hire a lot of people, we don't want to overinflate. We do want to stay pretty nimble and small and agile.
What do you think resonates most with players?
Probably the core gameplay loop. That's what we've been working the most on from the early start, and also received a lot of feedback throughout the years. We had an early build on itch.io and Discord community pretty early, tons of content. So we had an early vision, but a lot of changes we made was community based. We've never been too proud to listen to the community. We're always very open to hearing what players have to say, and that's been an important part of our development philosophy as well. So maybe it resonates with players because players have told us what they don't like, and then we've tried to fix it. And then you do that enough times, and then you might end up with something pretty good.
What does it mean to you personally to see players connecting with something you've spent so many years building?
That's the best thing that comes from games development, I think, is for any creator of any kind, like to put stuff out and see people have a relationship with it. There's plenty of stuff in TFC we would like to change. We see a lot of the faults with it, but people seem to connect with it anyhow, and they're not worried about the stuff that we worry about. They just tell us about what's happening in the game. And early in the Discord, or still that happens sometimes, people will put up like fan art or their own suggestions for art in the game, which is really cool. We like that a lot.
What advice would you give to aspiring developers?
It's a tricky one because I don't know if the way we've done TFC is necessarily the top for a lot of aspiring developers, because we have had a very build slowly, block by block process, and it's a grind, taking many years to get to this point. A lot of marketing gurus suggest for new developers, make a game in 3 months, release it, make another game in 3 months, release it, like just get some games out there, get some traction, get a following. Whereas we've taken the opposite approach, 9 years into this, and we're still working on it. So you have to have, what you say in Norway, ice in your tummy.
Yeah,
You have to have is i magen. Yeah, keep your cool for a long time, be very patient. I think that's how we want it to work, but I'm not sure I would advise everyone to do it that way.
I think the number one advice I personally would give any new up-and-coming game developer is to figure out what the product is. What are you making? We started TFC trying to scratch an itch about RTS games, but we didn't really have an end product in mind as we were doing it. I think if you can do some market research to figure out, obviously this depends on if you're trying to have game development as a career. If you're just making games for fun, you do whatever you want, of course. But if you're trying to make it a career, you need to think about the product from the beginning. And that'll be your risk mitigation process of figuring out where all the potential failures could be for at the market level, not necessarily so much in the game design level.
Yeah, because TFC grew out of just my desire to make an RTS game. I wanted to know how to make one. And I've always been interested in the Bronze Age specifically. So it's just my interest converging. I didn't do any market research before or anything like that. I had an idea that there's not so many real-time strategy games being made, so I thought it was a bit of a niche genre that could have some traction. But really, when I started out, it was 100% a hobby project, just me wanting to tick a box on my list, I have made an RTS game in my life kind of thing, because I just have wanted to do this over so long. It didn't really progress further until I put it on itch.io, and then we basically got an overwhelming amount of feedback, and I just realized, this actually resonates with a lot of people on itch.io, and they love playing this, even though it was so basic back then. Very, very simple. All the art was made by me. I'm not even an artist. It was all programs art. Players really liked it anyway, and so that's when the game kind of just organically grew over time, and with a prototype and a game idea. If I was to give one advice, it's not necessarily develop it in a vacuum. You should actually get feedback as early as possible, show it to people, get them to play it. And if no one likes it or people don't seem to care, maybe reconsider the idea. But if you have an idea that you think is good, and you just make a prototype and you just give it to someone and they just really on with the game right away and have fun, you might be sitting on something quite valuable. So prototyping, getting feedback early, I think is important.
Failing fast.
Yeah, failing fast.
Andre, Anders, would you be willing to join us on a journey into the Bronze Age for some TFC IRL?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Today's mystery segment is called TFC IRL. One day, technology might enable us to exist within a simulation so realistic we'll think we really are leading Bronze Age armies, but for now, I guess we'll use our imagination.
Anders and Andre, are you ready to head to the Bronze Age?
Diving in.
Excellent. You have 67 seconds on the clock, and your time starts 5,000 years ago.
Andre, you're in the Bronze Age, and there's no going back. What's the first thing you choose to invent?
I'll just live with the technologies they have at that time.
Good answer. Anders, you are also...
Actually, I changed my answer.
Okay.
Iron metal. High enough temperatures to do that. That was why the Bronze Age ended at some point, right? So that would have been a good advantage. That would be feasible.
Anders, you are also stuck in the Bronze Age, but you snuck one modern item into your Bronze Age backpack equivalent in order to become an infamous Bronze Age legend. What's the item?
Whatever I need to make penicillin.
Ooh.
If I could make penicillin, that would be pretty good. And I could be a world famous healer.
That's good.
Travel the world.
Andre, you're playing TFC IRL. Are you a wise ruler, a chaotic experimenter, or the reason your civilization collapses?
I'm the reason civilization collapses.
Anders, if you were newly in charge of a real Bronze Age city, what would be your first questionable executive decision?
Probably be a lot more alcohol available. There would be some sort of mandate. The beer city of Babylon.
Executive decision. Andre, raiders are coming. Do you defend your village, negotiate with the raiders, or tiptoe away under the cover of night?
I will negotiate.
You'll give them beer, and then their guard will be down.
I'll have a huge food surplus. The highest level. I'll train my technologies.
You've played this game before.
You've played this game before, haven't you?
Yeah.
Anders, would you rather face off against a starving army, a gaggle of angry farmers, or the LNBA strain of Yersinia pestis which spread across Eurasia during the late Neolithic and Bronze Age?
Oh, anything but the last one. Well, it depends on if I got my penicillin. If we're still in the same world where I got penicillin, it's all good.
You came prepared.
Yeah, you preempted this.
Yeah. If not, I would... Oh, I'll deal with the army.
The starving army.
I'll do like Mel Gibson from Braveheart speech, and I'll get them to do the right thing.
Or just to wait for them to faint of starvation.
Andre, you can only eat one Bronze Age food for the rest of your life, which won't be very long thanks to ritual sacrifice. What is it?
For taste, pomegranate. For nutrition, chickpeas.
Anders, what's worse? Running out of food or realizing your army just ate it all?
Oh, it's worse to run out of food, because that feels like a scenario where I can only blame myself.
This final question is for both of you. If you could add one completely unrealistic feature to the Fertile Crescent, what would it be?
Aliens. Absolutely aliens. We're bringing in aliens. I'm not actually a conspiracy theorist or don't believe in ancient aliens, but I find them really cool, and it would be so cool to do something with ancient aliens, building the pyramids and other stuff in the past. I think that's a really fun scenario.
I love that answer.
I would play that game.
I would play that game.
That's what I'm telling you. We've discussed this.
Yeah, it'll be the next DLC. The Earth is actually flat. And if you go too far out, you just fall down. And all the religions that, originate back then, they know the truth.
Good news! You both survived the mystery segment and TFC IRL.
Where can people find the Fertile Crescent?
On Steam and on Microprose's website.
Oh, and actually, good old games.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And what about the real Fertile Crescent? Because some people might not know that is actually a real place.
It's in the Middle East, roughly between northeastern Egypt, traveling north through Syria, going east towards Zagros Mountains, and then down through Iraq.
Andre, Anders, thank you for taking the time to chat with us today, and all the best with your game.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That was really fun. Thanks for having us on.
So Dan, what are your thoughts on the Fertile Crescent?
Well, I liked it. I played a few RTS games, and I played a bit of Age of Empires, but I enjoyed the old Warcraft 2 and StarCraft. Yeah, I quite liked it. I did the tutorial, and I had to learn how their mechanics work in their game, but I got the hang of it.
Did any of the mechanics stand out to you personally?
Yes, actually, the fact that you have to keep your food surplus continuously going, and so as your tribe are being created, you need to make sure that everyone's fed. So I describe it as treading water while you're doing other things. So you kind of have to make sure you're gathering berries and going hunting, and make sure you're building your farms while you're building your barracks and creating your army as well.
We're going to play a word association game. Just say whatever the first word that comes to your mind is. The Fertile Crescent is...
Great!
My favourite part about it was...
Learning how to play it.
My least favourite part about it was...
Learning how to play it.
So what was the first part of the game? When you started playing, did you start with the tutorial?
Yeah, it teaches you when you first start the game on campaign mode, yeah.
Did you find the tutorial easy to use?
Yeah, I did actually, yeah. It tells you what to aim for and how to do it, so it tells you what you need to build and what it does, yeah.
So when it came time to jump into the first mission, did you feel prepared?
Well, the first couple of missions have the tutorial with it, so it helps you along if you choose to keep the tutorial.
What was your favourite campaign?
Well, you know, the second one, it kind of, at first, you would just gather berries and you could maybe go hunting, but then I noticed that there were like little fish swimming in the ponds and the water, so then I was like, oh, so I discovered I could go fishing as well. I think anyone who likes playing RTS games and they've played other games which may have similar characteristics, it does definitely have a unique character to it, and I could totally keep playing it more, yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how badly do you think this game needs aliens?
10.
Did you hear that, Anders?
And
Wait, one more question. When it comes to the way the controls are set up, did you find it fairly intuitive?
Yeah, mostly, yeah. You can use the arrow keys to move the screen around. You're just using the mouse, really, so...
Do you think it could easily be quite addictive?
I think it could easily be quite addictive, yeah. Yeah, I could see myself playing a few more levels on the campaign, and once I've kind of learnt how to do everything, I could see myself playing it a lot. Just like how I would have got obsessed with Warcraft and StarCraft in the past.
So this is your official warning if you're listening to this episode, that the Fertile Crescent may be addictive. Please proceed with caution and seek further advice if you encounter any issues with addiction to this game. Overall, if you had to communicate what was good about this game to a friend in 2 sentences or less, what would you say to them?
I would say jump in and give it a go, because it's fun, it's different, it stands out to other games, and it makes it feel fresh. You heard it here first.
It's a fresh game. We should do an ad for them. We should be like, the Fertile Crescent.
It's fresh!
Game announcement. Legendary Pilots.
Legendary Pilots is a stylized flight sim where you're not just flying planes, you're building a career. With a super charming pixelated retro look, you start with small regional routes, earn money, buy and maintain your own aircraft, and climb your way up in a living world of competing airlines. It's accessible, immersive, and all about the journey from your first takeoff to running your own operation. Legendary Pilots is coming to Steam on April 21st, so if you like flight simulators and retro pixel art, wishlist it now and buy it on the 21st so you can play it before your friends.
And now it's time for...
Gaming news! The Microprose B17G Flying Fortress.
Every update brings this sim closer to the real thing. Available now on Microsoft Marketplace, Just Flight and Contrail.
Cleared Hard.
Cleared Hot Chapter 1B is live with missile minigolf, skeet shooting, and Uno Reverse. Yes, really. This game is getting out of hand.
Task Force Admiral.
The Midway mission generator is now live, bringing larger carrier battles, unpredictable starting positions, and a more dynamic battlefield. Fresh patch, new ships, and continued progress behind the scenes.
Dagger Directive.
Custom maps are on the way, free play mode is coming, and the UGC momentum keeps building with more community-created weapons already in-game. Plus, upcoming beta sessions will give you a chance to shape what's next.
Regiments.
One last update is coming to Regiments. Development is underway to deliver a proper send-off with new units, a new regiment, achievements, balance updates, and more.
Check out the Microprose website to catch up on all this month's Microprose news.
And there are new games for you to wishlist if you're the kind of person who loves games and wishes and lists. These games include
Factory Default. Build, trade, repeat.
Factory Default, Build, Trade, Repeat is a global industrial strategy game where you manage the entire production chain, from raw resources to high-tech goods, across a fully explorable 3D Earth. From mining to manufacturing, from profit to influence, the world is yours to control.
Gunship Origins.
In Gunship Origins, AI teammates aren't just background helpers. They're individual crew members, each making decisions based on their role and skill. Small details can make a big difference in how the mission plays out.
The Fertile Crescent.
Gather resources, build your base, and lead your people to victory in this captivating reimagining of classic RTS set in the Bronze Age. Secure fertile land, fend off raids, and stockpile food to generate knowledge and unlock powerful village advancements.
If you're quick, you can buy the Fertile Crescent on Steam in an indie base building RTS bundle, along with Godsworn, a classic mythological RTS.
Or, if you're listening to this episode in the future, just buy the Fertile Crescent. If you're listening to this in the past though, congratulations, you've achieved the time travel badge. The Microprose podcast will return next month with more exclusive interviews, gaming news, and, as always, a brand new mystery segment. In the meantime, feel free to transport yourself to the Bronze Age with the Fertile Crescent. For more information about anything you've heard here today, check out our show notes or go to www.microprose.com for devlogs, updates, and announcements.
And endgame.